So my favorite part about being in Quebec was the multicultural part of it. Mainly because I got to taste food from around the world. I had Sri Lankan food. I had, Northern Indian food. I had Southern Indian food. One of them was more spicy than the other. I don't remember which one. Delicious. And I got, Chinese food from Chinatown. Amazing. Mexican food and El Salvadorian food and like all of these different like countries. I got fufu from Africa. You get the classic potatoes and beef. I ate moose. I thought it was beef. So they served us this meat, and I look at it and I just assumed that it was a steak. I thought it was beef, and so I start to eat it, and it tastes kind of funny. And I didn't say anything. I'm not going to say anything. This is my first area. I'm not going to say anything. so I just ate it. It was beef tasted kind of weird, but that was okay. It wasn't until like a few weeks later that my companion notified me of what I ate, and he said that was orignal, which is moose. And so I was very surprised. I said, "Oh, that makes a lot more sense now. Why it did not taste like beef." There's always French food. You get cheese and breads are very cheap up there, which is really nice. Cheaper. I mean, it's not as cheap as in France, so I've heard, but it's cheaper than here for like really like designer cheeses and like good delicious cheeses. So the food was great. I don't think I'd ever tasted like fresh real baklava before, but that's delicious. Oh, and there's also another place in Ottawa. Ottawa's great, by the way, for food because there's these things called food trucks, and I've seen a couple of them around here in Provo, but in Ottawa they're all over the place. There's all these food trucks. In one of my areas there's a Greek family, and they fed us a Greek salad with real Greek olives, like from Greece, with the seed inside. And it was the most delicious salad that I've ever eaten in my life. It was so good. It was Gouda cheese and like all of this other like cucumber chunks and tomato chunks. It was so delicious. So yummy. In general, there's pretty much not a lot of danger. It's very westernized as far as crime goes. I mean, there's a lot of drugs on the streets of the big cities, and even a lot of the little cities have lots and lots of drugs. Because it's cold and there's not very much sun throughout the year, it's a very hard place to live because people get depressed really easily from that. And so there's a lot of healthcare and people just not being able to handle it and stuff like that. So that's something that you'll run into. So in Quebec, it's a huge immigration destination, and so we had a lot of Middle Easterners, we had a lot of Egyptians at the time because, Egypt was kind of in a scary moment, and so we had lots of refugees and lots of Africans. There's quite a big English community in and around Montreal. Everywhere outside of that, it's French, but just close to Montreal, the island, it's very English because it's a great place to have a business, and so people will come from the United States and live there to do business there, and so they keep it English so that they don't have to learn French. Anyways, there's a big English community, and it almost feels sort of oppressed. They sort of feel like they're oppressed from the French people because, me personally, I feel like it was just, I think I hit the microphone. Me personally, I feel like it's a misunderstanding really because, the French really, they want to keep their French, and so they see the English as a threat. And so it sort of just happens that way, that they feel that way towards each other, and it's gotten pretty heated before, like including like armed military or policemen on the borders between the French and the English provinces. And so That's one aspect of the culture that you'll run into there. And there's a huge Hispanic community in there. There's a huge Jewish community in there. Montreal was actually founded by the Irish. There's still a lot of loyalty to the Queen, which is interesting. I think it's cool. My grandparents are English, so I'm still sort of loyal to the Queen. But yeah. So the accents are very different. And in France, for example, you would say, if you wanted to say, what are you doing here? You would say, qu'est-ce que tu fais ici? Very, very proper, like, qu'est-ce que tu fais ici? Or even like, qu'est-ce que tu fais ici? That's more like Swiss. But anyways, I'm not very good at the accent. But in Quebec, it sounds more like, ça que tu fais ici? Very different. And it's you can find where that would, sort of come in. Like sec is in qu'est-ce que tu fais? Sec tu fais. And then ici, like in France they say ici, and then in Quebec when they're really angry they put a T at the end for no reason. It just sounds meaner, I guess. So it's ici. But the word for outside is dehors. It's like dehors, but it sounds like dehors. And so, but when they're really angry, they will say dehors, and they'll put a W in it for some reason. And this lady was very mad at us, and I don't know how I didn't laugh when she said that, but afterwards we laughed a little bit. Dehors. She was like, dehors. I remember one of my companions, some guy was telling them how to speak Québécois French. And he said, well, it's a good way to start a sentence is with ben. And a good way to end a sentence is with le. So, which is, I mean, not like every single sentence, but like you'll find that's very common. They'll be like, ben, je sais pas là, ben, ça que tu fais ici là. And like, that was the one I used earlier. Did you catch it? Ben, ça que tu fais ici là. That is the syntax of a Québécois sentence. So, yeah. Swear words in France are normal French swear words. They don't mean anything. They were probably made up words or something like that. In Quebec, all of their swear words are religious words. And so, like, when somebody screams baptism, they don't want to get baptized. They're actually cursing. And so, yeah. So watch out for that. Be careful when you say religious words around people. Make sure that it's in context and very clear that the worst part is that, like, the very worst word that you could say, and I'll use the English word so that I don't swear, is tabernacle. If you say that in Quebec, it's equivalent to using the F word. I think the person is a Québécois, and then the accent is called joual. Joual. So people from Lac Saint-Jean, they have a very strong joual, and so they'll say like a normal person would say, je suis allé fetcher la vache, which means I went out to fetch the cow. And somebody from Lac Saint-Jean would say it more like, je suis allé faire la vache. And it's very, and imagine that with no teeth. It's even worse. And so they'll use the word flat tire, and that's a French word in Quebec. And they'll say, j'ai un flat tire. That's the accent that they use. They even use an English R when they say it, but they think that it's French sometimes. Like, I've heard a story of somebody coming up and saying, comment dit flat tire en anglais, which means, how do you say flat tire in English? And that's an English word, it's flat tire. And he says, he's like, no, that's not English. And he's just very confused. He thought that was a French word his whole life. And so like we'll say, you know, and sometimes it's that way, but sometimes it's the other way around, because they'll say like they'll use very old French sometimes. So in France, a car is a voiture, une voiture. That's a car. But in Quebec, sometimes they'll refer to a car as a cart. They'll say like le char. And in France, even the stop signs say stop. They've invented a word, stopper. That's in France, stopper. And they also invented the word parking. But in Quebec, you don't park the car. C'est pas le parking. It's not parking. It's stationner. You stationize. I don't know how to say it, but you can't say parking, and you don't use voiture as a car. You say char. Mostly in car terms, they'll use a lot of English words like il faut checker l'huile. You have to check the oil. Checker, that's a verb in French, I guess.